I'd have done my hair different if I'd done you gone live.
Yeah, this is where we are live now, and we're always talking about hair and makeup and how we look. But hi everybody at the hi everybody at the What's on an Elephant and Castle Facebook page. Today, myself and Melissa are going to be joining Kate Shilland. Kate Shilland, I suppose, in a nutshell, one word, is a nutritionist. But Kate, like so many people that we've interviewed, you have this resume and a biography that is just so long and full of accomplishments that it's hard to repeat. So could you introduce yourself to us, please?
Oh, that's quite flattering. I'm not sure if that's so true, but thank you. Yeah, so currently I'm a nutritionist, a performance nutritionist. So I work with athletes from sort of recreational up to real top level professional athletes, helping them understand that link between what they're eating and how they perform, so both physically and mentally. That's a real big part of it. Before I got into this, I worked with young offenders, so I'm trained in CBT, which actually I found really useful, transferable skills actually whilst now working in nutrition. Because again, it's trying to sort of encourage people to make positive changes. And I think a really big part of that is establishing a trust and actually learning about the person, the individual that you're working with, rather than just looking at the food. You kind of have to go back, understand the person, find the goal, and then work backwards from that for that individual. So that's where I am. I work with, a lot of my work is with young athletes. I work at Crystal Palace Football Club Academy, so from ages 9 up to the under 23s. And I work with a lot of young athletes at one of the big local athletics clubs, Blackheath and Bromley Harriers, which is, we've got some real stars from there. Also, tennis players are a fairly big one at the moment. So there's quite a broad range of people that I'm working with, which is nice because it keeps it interesting, keeps it varied. And yeah, it's every day is different, which is great. And I think, like we were just saying before we went live, I think that's the real key thing working with people, is that acknowledgement that actually everyone is unique. So you have to do one size fits one, and you have to understand what their needs are rather than try and sort of blanket approach to everything, because it just doesn't work, as you well know.
Yeah, it's kind of the same in the world of, well, I think all of it's healing, but when I'm doing counseling or work, I can't take one approach I read in a textbook 20 years ago when I was studying and think it's going to apply in any kind of safe and sustainable way nowadays. For every person, it's just not possible, right? And it's not realistic.
Yeah, sure. And also you learn, you know, and also we have that expectation that we have to know everything. And I think when you start out, you feel worried if you don't know stuff. But I think that's another key part of it. Sort of you learn as you go along, and you learn things through clients. And, you know, I had a girl yesterday who some of her foods on her food diaries were incredible. I was like, I'm going to use this for athletes that I'm working with, if that's okay. Yeah. Because you know, we're not expected to have all the answers. It's great when we can then discover new things with the people we're working with.
And then that builds so much trust, huh? When, like, I know, like 20 years ago, and I started doing like therapeutic work with people in the community, sometimes it was like, I don't know. And it wasn't because I was trying to, like, I was just trying to be as honest as, like, I don't know what the next step is for you. I don't know if there's actually even hope right now. And just that authenticity and honesty created trust, right? Sure. And allowed people to be like, oh, well, then if you don't know and I don't know, then maybe I'm not worse off or best off, because we're all like trying to figure this stuff out together.
Yeah, that's the thing. You don't know, but if you can be confident that you know a way to try and at least find out, then obviously, you know, that's the best you can offer, isn't it? Or the best you can do.
And how beautiful is it to do it together with people? Like, I know Nick and I, this is part of Retry, but like, you don't actually have to do this alone. Life is already so hard sometimes on its own, and with your own heart and your own mind. And like, why do you have to figure yourself out or try and heal yourself on your own? You don't need to, right?
Yeah, sure.
Can sit with you. Yeah.
And that side of it is so important. Like we were saying, you know, for me, obviously the nutrition side, I would always prioritize health. So obviously performance is a really brilliant consequence of feeling good and nourishing your body. So we'll always prioritize the health, and then the performance will come. And I think that nourishing your body well nourishes the brain well too, and you know, you become a more confident, well focused, more driven athlete. But it's really important to have someone on the sort of mindset side helping support in that way as well, because, you know, the pressures that come with being a young person in general, but then being a young person that's expected to perform on whatever stage, whether it's the local, playing field on your Sunday league football to the global stage, that everyone puts their own pressures on themselves, don't they? And I don't think that naturally we have very good coping strategies to deal with that. So it's great if then you've got someone like you that works alongside and can help them kind of develop ways to kind of cope with pressure or stress, or give that inner belief, which I think is such a huge thing.
Yeah, like these help. Go on, Nick. I feel like I'm going to keep talking. I felt like you were going to say something.
No, I just love the conversation that's going, but I'm going to take this right back now to why sport. You guys are talking about nutrition, you're talking about the mental aspects of it, but Kate, for you, what was it about sport? And why is it so you have the top elite performance levels right down to Sunday league, Hackney Marsh, football, all of these different spectrums and abilities. But for you, what is it about sport that's so important to our culture?
Well, I've always loved sport. I've always been into sport from a really young age. I used to run. I was sort of top 10 in the country for 100 meters for quite a long time. So a lot of my teenage years were spent just down at the running track. And I think I established a really good group of peers, and it kept me away from a lot of the stresses that I think a lot of other people were going through at that time. And I just think sport provides that sense of belonging. You're mixing with like-minded individuals and also like-minded families, which is important. You've got this, I think you instill different values and morals than sometimes you would be exposed to if you weren't in sport. But also healthy body, healthy mind. It makes you feel good. When you move, you feel good. And I think that, sport, I think when I was younger.
Oops, I don't have anything.
No, I think she's frozen.
Yeah.
But we're talking about sport and why sport. And Melissa, I was actually going to come to you with that same question. I know you have a black belt in Taekwondo. You've always talked to me about sport, and I'm an ex-athlete and everything. We've always had a conversation around sport. For you,
everyone was running around doing stuff, but now it has to be going to speak to.
Oh, okay.
Can I? Did I freeze?
You froze for a couple minutes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So can you repeat?
Should I carry on?
We were going. Yeah, just about why sport. Yeah. And you got about to the different families and the connection around different families and like-minded families and stuff.
Okay, and I would say, so also I think that these days, sport used to be, kids used to just be running around all the time. Now it has to be more structured. There's less of that kind of unstructured activity, and which I think is really sad. I think people have lost, everyone's on their PlayStations, or people are a lot more sedentary. And with that comes a lot of other problems, health-related problems, also like physical and mental health. And there's a lot of stress with that. That's why I think sport is a real brilliant buffer against all those things. I'm obviously biased because I love it anyway. And I'm always, and I know my mood is so much better. I'm such a nicer mum. I'm just more patient when I've been for a run, or when I've been to the gym, or I've done something physical. And I think that, and so I always think, it's such a shame when people don't do this and don't realize there's this feeling that you can have. And I think that everyone has the right to feel like, be able to feel like that. So I think we need more sports in schools. And I think I was saying when I got cut off that I've been working with this really amazing organisation called We Are Girls in Sport. And they set up because the statistics for girls dropping out of sport when they get into their adolescence are crazy. I can't remember what the number is, but it's like over 75%, I think, dropout rate. Even those are at a really quite high level at that point. So they are doing a really brilliant campaign just to try and encourage girls to stay in sport, and they're exploring all the different sports, because I think, again, when you're young, it's like football or netball or hockey, or there's quite a small range of sports, but actually sport encompasses so many things. There is something for everyone, like you see in the Olympics, like there's skateboarding, BMXing, archery. It doesn't have to be just the things that you feel like you may be limited to or not any good at. So for me, it's a big avenue for feeling good, and an access to another world where actually, you can maybe feel more confident in yourself and develop skills and friendships and, resilience that you need in the bigger, broader world.
Yeah,
So
you mentioned
that's a long answer.
no, you mentioned the drop off about females, involved in sport. And Melissa, I was going to throw the same question to you because, you very, very active in sport. You've got a black belt in Taekwondo. What was sport like in growing up? Sport in this very masculine, male-dominated area is martial arts, but also in Toronto, Canada, which is probably one of the most sports-centric cities that I've known in a long time. So,
Is it?
So yeah, it's mad sport crazy, yeah. But in terms of its culture, right? Everyone is always talking about sports, and everyone is always on sports news. So for you growing up in Toronto, and also in the environment that you grew up in, so you can kind of tell us a little bit about that as well, and why martial arts was important to you.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I think I'm gonna answer this in a very complicated way. But there is the idea of like what it is like to be a woman or a girl at that time when I started in sports, and what it feels like when you're trying to like grow into your body and your friends are like putting like makeup on, but you have to go train for 3 hours in like a white uniform. There is this idea of like what it means to be a woman and how you like start to get like to know yourself and your body in relationship to what sports or like a dominant culture tells you what a woman needs to be like, or like a teenage girl. So there's like that mental component to it. That's one piece, and we can go into that later if you want. But then I think for me, I think I started it as a way to like, my mom wanted me to play piano, and I was like, this is boring. I need to do something. Like I need to be out. So I started as just curiosity, and I always was interested in martial arts and stuff. And then while I kind of started early on, I had a very like significant tragedy happen into my life where I just shut down and like basically hated the world around me, and I was angry at everything and everyone. And then Taekwondo and training was the only way I could like almost feel something, or like I knew what to do. It gave me some sort of like hold onto the world. So I kept training in that because it kept me connected to myself when I was spiraling inside and outside of myself. So that was really powerful and beautiful. But I did take it to the other end of the spectrum where I didn't let myself do anything almost, Nick, to use your language, like tender. I like went in it too aggressively and too rough that I went from like it could be fun and it could be a way for me to meet myself to like, there's no place for anything else but this, even in the way I talked to myself. And the way I trained almost went to the other end of the spectrum. Like eventually I found the balance. But all of this to say is that it did allow me a sense of self when I was like internally exploding and grieving and I didn't understand anything. It allowed me to know something, and I did know, like, when my instructor told me to do something, I did it. And that's what I needed at that time. I needed that guidance and that discipline and that almost safety in having, like you said, the sense of family and belonging. Like I knew who I was when I was training or when I was sparring. Like I knew what I could do, right? Outside, not so much, but in that kind of room, I knew what I was about. And I think that's so important for kids or teenagers at the time, I guess I was, to like at least begin this identity kind of conversation with themselves without the pressure of saying, well, it's wrong or it's too much or it's not that. It is an opportunity for us to know each other, isn't it? And know ourselves. Did I answer your question, Nick? I'm sorry. Like I have a lot going on.
No, it's just there's just two very different perspectives there about what sport can bring to us. And I think that, as coaches and as people who guide people in sport, I think it's very important to know that each individual, whether it's a team sport or something like martial arts, each individual has their own reason for being there. And I think that that's one thing that I know that my coaches didn't understand when I was a kid. They just piled us all into a room and were like, do this, do this, do this, do this. There was no compassion and understanding that kids may have had something happen in the house that day. And 3 kids may have had completely different experiences. And another 5 kids may have had, and they're all coming into these environments, Kate, that you see an awful lot. And I'm just wondering, how have, like you look at this, the nutrition aspect of it, but really sport is like a holistic approach to things. And we've learned so much over 50 years of organized sports, but there seems to be a shift and a change in compassion towards athletes nowadays. And I maybe if you could speak to your experience of, how sport is evolving, I suppose, in its training aspects.
Yeah, you're so right. nutrition is one part of it. Like, you know, there's such a multiple kind of cogs in that whole performance wheel, or that well-being wheel. And I think if we all stay in our lanes and work really well in our expert fields with that sort of a common goal of each athlete in the middle, then we do a good job, without room for ego. You know, everyone's got an equal part of that role, and we do it well without needing any glory for it. I think that's a really important part. Someone once said, oh, you know, it's amazing what can get achieved when no one cares who takes the credit for it. And I think that's really important to kind of instill in your culture. We've been trying to at Palace, you know, that's something that we're really keen on doing. There was a guy, he's not there anymore sadly, but he was the head of coaching, and he was really made a priority that we needed to understand these players. He said, like, just like what you just said, they all turn up when we get them on the training field. He's like, we need to know what's their favorite band, what's their favorite food, they got brothers and sisters, where are they in that order, what's their mum's name, what's the, you know, things about this kid. So then we can go, all right, what are you doing at the weekend, how was it, how was your holiday, things that we can they know that we are interested in them as a person rather than just what they can do on the pitch. And we saw that as soon as they were able to thrive as their individual characters, they got so much more out of themselves on the pitch and enjoyed it so much more. And I think people need to feel listened to and valued. And I think back to what you were saying, Melissa, about sport providing the safety of those boundaries and those rules, because life is complicated, isn't it? And I think as you grow, sometimes you want to test those boundaries, but sport provides that the rules are the rules. Whereas in life, the rules are a bit woolly, aren't they, sometimes? So I think that for me, I've seen that the culture changing in terms of moving more towards trying to understand the person. And that's always been the way I would do it. And I think that probably comes from my background of working with young offenders, or just that's my personality. I think I respond best when people try to understand me or are interested in me rather than just what I do. And I think that's probably one of the most important things. And then people feel comfortable and safe to be able to speak to you about stuff that might be less related to their performance, but actually is having a really big impact on their performance.
Exactly.
You realise what everything's connected. And for me, like, obviously biased as a nutritionist, but the food plays such a massive role, more so than you would think, just in their mood and their concentration, their focus, and how they interact with other people. You know, if you turn up to training hungry, you're not going to get the best out of yourself. You're going to be grumpy. Someone's going to do a bad tackle. You're going to respond in a way that, you know, we wouldn't encourage, because you physically don't have the tools to act any different. So the education side as well is really important to help them understand how to get the best out of themselves.
I don't know what your experience has been, Kate, but with me, I've been working with some women who have been in sport, and there's like this relationship with food that I've watched like evolve. So like it's like women, for example, in gymnastics or dancing, like food is not a friend. Food is not a thing that gives us fuel. So like so much of the work I'm doing with a couple of women is to unlearn like this that food will get you fat, and now it's become food is fat to food is our friend and it's fuel. So even the way we have this conversation and relationship with food and ourselves is such an important piece that does affect even, I would say, the joy of performing, right? If we're performing, or I'm not even gonna say performing, for me, example, if I eat like half a pint of ice cream, which I did 2 days ago, and then I work out like to burn the calories, that takes the joy out of the experience, perhaps, of like why I decided to treat myself to ice cream.
For sure.
And there's so much pressure around food and like what we need to eat, how we need to eat it, and the mental component too, that it can actually, and it is our friend as fuel, not something that we have to punish ourselves for. I don't know if that's something that you've seen a lot over the years, especially with women, girls.
It's huge, because nutrition is so poorly communicated, and the messages that are out there are terrible. They are, you know, the title nutritionist isn't regulated as yet. So actually anybody can call themselves a nutritionist and just set themselves out and give out nonsense advice. And it's all about the quick fix, the fad. It's never about the health, and it's never evidence-based, and I can go on a whole rant about this. I won't, because but yeah, that is probably one of the biggest things, unteaching bad habits. And actually the facts that they think they have about nutrition are really, really topsy-turvy, and everyone's trying to avoid carbs, but actually as an athlete, carbs are absolutely your best friend. You need them, and you get out what you put in. And people feel like they need to earn their food, but actually you need to fuel your performance, perform really well, get more out of yourself. And I think that's the thing, that taking away any relationship between having to earn your food or burn off your food, it doesn't work. And we need a real shift in that mindset, not just for athletes, but for everybody, because food is your fuel. And I work with a lot of weight making athletes, actually. And every single one of them, in order to lose weight and make the weight for their fight, they have to eat more. Because the food we eat gives our bodies the tools it needs to do the job we're asking of it. So the better the tools we've got in our toolkit, the better we can do that work. But if everything's always focused on restricting what you can't eat, what you mustn't have, whereas I'm always about what you need to add in, what the body needs to be at its best. And it's a much more positive way of looking at it anyway. If it's all about restriction, it's pretty negative, and you generally then just want the thing that you're actively trying not to have. But actually, if you put the right things in, like for example, loads of people cut out carbs, but our brain is fueled by carbs, our central nervous system and our muscles, we need them, particularly if we're active. So if we're not having carbs earlier in the day, we end up craving something really sugary later, because our brain just needs that sugar. So actually, I see a lot of people that might not have toast with their eggs in the morning, but then at 10 at night, they're having like a Yorkie bar or a pack of biscuits. But that seems okay. And you're like, oh.
Right.
But, but then we're creatures of habit. So we do what we always do until you have actually reflect on it and go, do you know what? Actually, yeah, that is nuts. But, but you have to deliver that in the right way that people don't feel stupid. It's just, you just need to give people the facts, and it doesn't have to be complicated. And I think that bad nutrition advice sort of convinced us that good nutrition advice is too simple to be true. So it's overcomplicated everything, but it's basic. And if you nail the basics, then you've got a really brilliant foundation for health and performance and feeling good and feeling in control. So I think probably really relevant to your side, actually food is one of the few things that we can control, but it's also one of those things that we generally feel quite out of control of, because the messages are really complicated. We don't really know where to start. There's so many different fads. You can't open a book without reading something new.
Everybody's an expert.
Yeah, everybody is an expert, and they're really not. It's really annoying. But that's where we are with that. And I think so. My biggest part of my role is education. It's like, right, okay, ignore all that. These are the facts. This is actually what you need to be your best and what your body needs. And if we do that right, there's no need for the kind of quick fixes on the top. Particularly sort of the supplement market. I mean, that's a whole nother area as well. But there are so many of these, over products that overpromise and underdeliver, or at worst, they're harmful to health or aren't batch tested. So you then, get yourself in trouble with your regulatory body. So it's not worth the risks, but people want a quick fix, don't they?
I want to go into parents, because nutrition is something that, someone who's in their mid-teens is going to rely upon their parents to be involved in their nutrition, because they're the ones that are going to be going out and getting the groceries. But I'm 50 years old, and it was when I was about 16 years old, so 34 odd years ago, I was really getting invested in my body and working out and going to the gym, because I really wanted to push myself to the point where I could play professional ice hockey. I had this goal, and my father showed some interest in it, in the fact that I grew up in Saskatchewan, so it's very flat farmland. And there was a farmer that sold started to be a supplement, which was just a kind of a green barley powder that you would put in apple juice or something. It tasted absolutely horrible. Disgusting, but I remember my dad coming home with this, a mason's jar of this green barley that he bought from a farmer market on his way back from work. And just him doing that act was like, wow, he really is caring about me and what I'm putting in my body, and it created this little bond of my dad having some interest in what I was putting in my body. I thought that was a really cool thing for a parent to be able to do. there was also some other things that he taught me that I needed to unlearn about not being able to cry or reach out for help or anything like that. But what involvement now do you think that a parent should have? Well, obviously they have this huge investment in nutrition, but with the knowledge around it, because we kind of go back to what we learned 30 years ago, thinking that that was going to be okay for us to compete to today. So I think that parents need to be educated just as much as in all of this process, as well as the athlete.
Yeah, absolutely. I do a lot of workshops with parents either just with parents or with parents and the kids. And we do some practical ones as well, where they're actually cooking things and making things together, which is quite fun. Because there's lots of reasons for that. Obviously, they're the ones that are buying the food and generally cooking it. With the older kids, we're encouraging them to have the skills to start making their own stuff. So they've got, an athlete that understands that link between food and performance is great. That's one thing. But one that understands that link plus has those skills to make some stuff for themselves is even better. So we're trying to encourage that. But with parents, it's vital, because I don't think they realise how much their habits rub off onto their children. And there's a lot of young athletes, particularly girls, I'd say, but boys too, but probably the majority is girls at this point, that have learned things from their mums generally. Again, oh, my mum doesn't really eat lunch, or mum avoids bread, so I shouldn't have bread. And because they've grown up in that, or the sort of low carb, low fat era, where there were even more fads probably than there are now. Well, actually, I don't know about that, but they were probably just coming in.
The beginning.
And those habits, I think we don't realise how much our kids pick up on subliminally. And it's really difficult though, because, and this probably comes more to your point, Melissa, but if a child hasn't got a particularly good diet, it's a very sensitive issue raising that conversation with the parent, because you don't want to suggest that they're not doing a good job of doing the right thing for their kid. But if they haven't had that education, if we've not been taught, then how are we supposed to know? Because like we said, the messages are really conflicted and it's hard to navigate. And also schedules are really full on. So if you've got to get your kid to school, there's straight to training and then sometimes another training, and they're eating on the go. It's hard in practical terms to know, well, what's the best thing to put in them, and that they're going to be comfortable then running around the pitch or a court or whatever it might be. So often those quick fix options aren't the best. So a lot of my work as well is the practical application of it, because obviously you need the knowledge, but it doesn't mean anything if it's not in food terms. So it's like, okay, what does it look like? What would be the good choices to have pre or post game or on the go, or what would be good breakfast? And a lot of young people don't have breakfast because perhaps their parents don't. And those cultures, they're hard to break. So I think getting the whole family buy-in is really, really important.
Yes, it feels like there needs to be like a mental or a cultural shift around like what our day-to-day life, even if maybe you're a single parent and you have 3 kids and you don't have a lot of income, and like, this is my rant that I'm going to try not to go on, but what the food industry is, in that it's cheaper to get a meal at McDonald's than it is to get like broccoli. Like, these are really things that we have to kind of start to at least talk about, to know that it's not the fault or a moral value or judgment of the parents. Sometimes it's like, actually, like, you're in survival mode, man, and that's not something we can blame or judge you for, but that's something we have to end. That's something we have to start acknowledging, is that we are part of a system that is making unhealthy food choices for us and unhealthy choices in general really easy. And if we're struggling and overwhelmed and want to, make sure our kids are okay, then that's part of the choices we make. And that's not something anyone gets to shame or judge you around, right? But it is just like the tools around, maybe if you know how to make porridge quickly in the morning, that saves you from buying the like 2-pound energy bar that might spike up your sugar and drop you down more quick. So it is this education piece.
And it's also all the language around it, like good, it's bad, it's not, it's just food, and maybe the amounts you eat of it may be better or worse, but actually it's all just food. And these superfoods, or the marketing terminology, and then, or clean eating and all that stuff. So, oh my gosh, clean eating is when you maybe wash your hands before you eat, or wash your food. Like, I hate that term. Or cheat days, all those things. It's like, eating is never cheating. You have to eat. You need to put stuff in your body. And I think I know obviously globally we have a real issue with overweight and obesity, but more in the performance side, what I see is the biggest problem is under eating and not having enough calories and not nourishing your body right, and really not being aware of just quite how much food you need to eat. And I think that's another point with the parents, and often they say that he's just constantly eating, but actually some of these athletes need, 4.5 up to 5,000 calories a day. It's a real lot of food. So to then help explain that to the parents, and again, then it's costly to feed, to provide that amount of food for someone on a daily basis. So it's okay, how can we best do that? And actually we do, in one of my clinics, we do metabolic testing. So we can actually look at your resting metabolic rate, help people understand exactly how many calories they need just to survive. And then we build the day around that so they can actually see what they need, which is particularly important for young girls. I did a talk in a private girls' school who they would all been suckered in by the TikTok, what I eat in a day. They were all, so they were year 11 and they were all aiming for 1,200 calories a day because that was the magic number on TikTok. And, that's not enough to fuel a 4-year-old. So I got a volunteer and I did her metabolic rate testing, and we worked out that actually just to stay alive, even if she just stayed in bed all day, she would need 1,700 calories. That's before she even moved. And the collective gasp in the room, they were like, what? So it's like, listen to science, not social media. You need to make sure that you know the sources of good information and actually know how to kind of navigate your way through that kind of, Generation Z. It's tricky, isn't it?
Yeah. I appreciate so much what you're saying about the language, because there is, like, I think in all the world, it's easy to like divide, and there's decisiveness, and there's good and bad and black and white, and yes and right and wrong, and yes and no, and like, especially with food, like the way we even digest. I know there's some things that Nick can eat and gives him fuel, and I eat and knocks me out, and we need that to take time to learn our body. But like you've said, Kate, there's always this like quick fix around everything, especially when it comes to health and nutrition and even like athletic performance. Like, you don't wake up and know how to become an Olympic athlete. You just don't do it. Takes years to cultivate, to practice, to train. And somehow we think with our nutrition, our food, even our mental health, right? Like that once you figure something out, then you should be okay forever and never come back. And it's such a journey, it's such a dance, but the world doesn't right now at least support it as much as maybe it needs to in terms of the progress around everything, right?
Yeah. And also different days you have different requirements, and some days people say, oh, I've been such a pig today, and I'm like, you need more energy. You're not being pig, you just need more energy. And particularly also with young girls, around your cycle, your energy demands and your energy requirements do change, and you also how you feel in your body and the way you process your fuel. So actually it means training becomes more you're more conducive to sort of strength training or endurance training at different times in the cycle. And I think the better we understand our bodies, the less we give ourselves a hard time, because sometimes we say, oh, I just felt crap and what's wrong with me, and I'm not training well, and I'm eating all the time. Is actually that's just what you need. So, like, listen to your body and don't beat yourself up about it. You need to make peace with all of those things, which is easier said than done. But I think we just need to sort of uncomplicate it, because I think that's the big problem. And I think as well, like you're saying, the quick fix, right at the beginning when I started practicing, I think the first few people that came to see me, they were boxers actually, and they said, okay, so what do I need to take? That was the first question, right? What do I need? Tell me what I need to take. And I'm like, well, there is this one awesome thing. And they're like, what? And I was like, it's called food. And they're like, boring. Like, it's like, it's hassle. That's long. And like, but if you get that right, you don't need. And also, there's, you take all these tablets. I'm like, what colour's your wee? It just pretty much goes straight out. You're not getting any goodness from that. All you're losing is, quite a lot of money and potentially your sort of integrity, because if a lot of those substances aren't batch tested. So we need to kind of get away from this like instant gratification society, don't we?
I think too, like I'm so happy that you mentioned the cycle, because like when I just a couple years ago started realizing that, my hormones are affected, my cycle affects everything about my like life and like identity and my relationship with everything. And I started feeding myself more foods when I was eating, which is so counter, or when I was in my cycle, which is so counter to what I grew up with, like less is more, less is more, less is more. But I realized like when I have a lot more food when I'm bleeding or when my cycle is like, it makes a huge difference. Like I could think clearer, I have more energy. But even for women, as women, we don't like to talk about the things that are actually, or we don't feel comfortable talking about the things sometimes. Like, and it's not our fault. I think society is still really scared about like women's bodies. But yeah, it's so important.
And that's really tricky, I think, in a lot of sports. So the under-eating, the sort of the relative energy deficiency in sport is such a big area at the moment. And, you know, that's a whole different area. And there are people that are experts just in that. But we all need to be aware of it as practitioners. And there is a lot of under-eating and, you know, a lack of skipping a period or your period stopping has become fairly normal for quite a few athletes, and people have normalized it, but it should never be normal. It's a sign that something's not right. And I think in sport there's a lot of male coaches or female athletes, and I think again we don't feel comfortable talking just amongst peers or other females, so it is even more tricky to then raise that with a male coach potentially. But that's something, again, this isn't, I'm not stepping out of line here, but that's something that also needs to be changed, because it isn't okay. And I've heard coaches say, oh, don't worry, that's just what happens and it will come back at some point. So well, that's your body's sign of saying like, this isn't working. And it's never okay. But I think sometimes it seems okay because it's always that inconvenience is out of the way, or, you know, and sometimes there is that fine line between performance, you know, weight and performance, and sometimes you're a little bit lighter, particularly for sort of endurance sports or for the gymnasts like you were talking about. There can be a slight benefit, but then there's that, when does that tip, when does the balance tip and it becomes a real risk to health?
Thank you. You guys okay? No one's breaking up? I think Mel froze there for a second. Okay. I want to just quickly go on to aspirations, Kate, and how, you know, athletes are being, you know, inspired to become the next, and how, you know, so like young men becoming the next Marcus Rashford, and young people being, who's going to be the next Emma Raducanu, even though she's just won the US Open. And there's all these, in fact, when that just happened, I was watching the news, and all the news is who's going to be the next Emma? Who's going to be the next Emma? And I was kind of going, well, let her be her. And why don't you let these kids that are just getting involved because we've got a successful athlete in tennis right now, just be them. So this kind of, this thing of where sport is just for play, and when are you aspiring to be like an elite athlete that is going to earn money playing the sport that they love? Because there's such a huge spectrum. And I'm just wondering, like, you know, how you work with an athlete to go, you know what, you use sport for play and enjoy it, buddy, or just love it. And then this idea of where do we get to this level of we can point you in a direction of becoming an athlete that's going to be professional, because there's 99.9% of athletes that are not going to make a living. They're not going to be another Emma, even though they're aspiring to it. So how do you deal with that?
Well, first and foremost, you have to enjoy it, don't you? You have to still get something from your sport. You have to make you feel good. You have to enjoy the people that are with you, around you in it. For me, fueling right is a big important part of that, because if you fuel right, you keep seeing those performance progresses, and it kind of keeps you motivated. But the key thing is, keep it fun, keep it fun for as long as possible. And then you do have those ones that will say, so what are these guys doing? What are these guys doing? And I do always say, well, they're not you. So you're the only you on the planet. That's your superpower. So we have to make you the best you. And it's funny, actually, my daughter's, her goal is to be the fittest woman on the planet. And someone said, and Tia-Clair Toomey is like her hero. And someone said, are you going to be the next Tia-Clair Toomey? She said, no, I'm going to be the first Matilda Shilland. I was like, yeah, I love that. That's true, isn't it? But I think, so these people are, especially in football as well, they're asking me, so what's this guy doing? What's his sleep like? How's he train? So I think the best thing you can do is like, well, look at what the people that you admire are doing. and take the best bits from that and then make it your own and do it your way, but in a way that keeps it fun and interesting for you. If you don't enjoy it, then you're never going to get to the top. So I think that's always the key, is just for the coaches and all the people around you to help keep it enjoyable, help keep you thriving, feeling good about yourself, and dealing with the disappointment. I think it comes back to you guys. Sport is tough. It's like there's a dark side to sport, and it's not all fun and glory. There's real tough bits, and you need to be very specific mindset to deal with that resilience and turn disappointments into determination and make them drive you forward. And I think that's where the difference becomes the people that have got that kind of dialed in and those coping skills and the support around them that can help them deal with it when it's not all rosy, because everyone's happy when it's going well, but it's learning how to cope with those bits that probably help people move further along up that ladder. I don't know if I answered that question right. And did I freeze?
You did. I think
I did.
No, not Melissa's frozen.
Oh,
sorry.
Yeah. No, it's okay. Like I think that at my age right now, and I played professional sports for long enough to understand the discipline that I needed to do that. And it's only now where I'm coaching some youth ice hockey in the Sobel Leisure Center in Islington, which is a 1/5 the size of a normal ice rink. And if you've ever seen the Mighty Ducks, the movie The Mighty Ducks, I'm Gordon Bombay right now. Coaching these kids that are all, I don't want to use the word misfits because but they're just beautiful with mismatching equipment, and some of them never stepped on the ice before. And I'll tell you what, Kate, it is the pure joy that I've not experienced in such a long time, where these 3 hours of my weekend are the happiest I've been, just because I can help kids play, and teach them some valuable skills along the way. And it makes me wonder, that is the value of sport and playing, and if, like you said, there are certain individuals who do have certain attributes that were, given to them at birth that can excel and become those elite athletes, but that really, the beauty of sport, the beauty of nutrition, the beauty of all of the things that we've spoken about today is just how do we maximize our experience, through the sport that we play. That was kind of my little rant about enjoying and playing.
But yeah, and I think, there's probably plenty of individuals that also have been born with those natural attributes that don't have the other bits that they need to then carry them up to the top. It's so many things that have to come together, don't they, to make a champion. It's not easy, but I think that obviously you need the skill, but I think it's the mindset, the motivation, the support, the enjoyment, the opportunity, all those things. There's so many things. But primarily it has to be enjoyable. It has to be fun. Otherwise, as soon as you're kind of thinking, oh, I've got to go to training, if your heart's not in it, you can't get where you want to be, or you can't get to the top, can you? So
no. Mel, are you frozen? She is. Oh, now she's coming back.
Yeah, it's I missed. My internet is being not very cool right now.
No, we have to get you a new internet. Do you want to? Do you have anything you want to say?
I've been on the wait list. No, Kate, it's a really lovely meeting you, and I just want to say, I think what I'm taking from this is the reinforcement of the importance of skills being transferable. So you can be a high performing athlete, and the skills you learn in your training also can apply to your relationship with your family, with your partners, with your children. These are just skills we can take and grow and develop, whether we learn them or unlearn them, all these things. So I think even reinforcing that mental component, that this is not siloed, right? We are not just athletes or trainers. We are humans, and we have all these skills.
That's the thing, because whatever we're doing, we're still us. So we're the same person, whether we're in our sport or in school or at home, or we're still us. So yeah, absolutely. It's sort of, and you learn really valuable things from each of those different components that you then all put together and help you get where you need to be.
Hey, we're kind of coming off of the summer now, and everyone's back at school, and athletes are getting back into their sports. What's the next few months look like for you?
Busy, really busy. Busy season at Palace. Sport is picking up again. Well, I don't think I say picking up again. I don't think it ever really dipped, because sports, there's always a different season in a different sport, isn't there? There's athletics in the summer, and football actually doesn't really have a very good big break because they have the off-season program. And then you've got athletes that are, you know, training the whole time, whatever they're runners, whatever their sport is, they're always training. So I think that's one of the problems, actually. There's not a very big off switch in the sport, is there? And I think people are really reluctant when I say, you know, the rest is a really important part of it. You know, I say, you know, that the training's like a catalyst to change, but if you don't eat well or rest well around it, that change can't happen in a positive direction. You're just going to be sort of catabolic and getting increasingly fatigued or increase your risk of injury. But everyone's reluctant to accept that, yeah, you need a rest day, and it's actually a part of the process. So actually, I think, you know, although it's maybe getting busier, I don't think it ever got quiet enough, because people are too keen to just keep on going. And that's when, you know, that kind of fatigue can then prevent people from getting to the top, can't it? Or I think that's often why people then drop out, because they don't get the buzz from it that they were hoping they'd get. So
how can people get in touch with you?
Via my Insta, or via my website, or my phone. You've got all those details, right? So you can put them where you need to put them.
I'll put them in the Facebook chat. But also, I think that in a little while we're going to need you on again, because we didn't really get into the nutrition, you know, and so maybe some of the tips and guides that you can kind of give knuckleheads like me, which I would really appreciate.
That's what's really important, because obviously you need to educate people on the nutrition, but people just want to know, okay, so I'll help them understand why they need what their body needs, but they need to know, okay, what does that look like? So on a shelf, what do I pick up? What do I put on my plate? Because that's the stuff that's the practical, you know. Or so sometimes I do supermarket trips with an athlete and say, right, okay, this is your budget, this is what we're going to put in our basket. And often we'll go around the supermarket in the opposite direction than they normally would go in, because, you know, you always pick up the same stuff. Actually, it's quite an interesting exercise if you do that. Go in reverse, which is better anyway, because then the soft stuff always ends up on the top. Like when you go in a supermarket, the fruit and vegetables in the first aisle, so it's at the bottom of your trolley and they get squished. It's the bad design. So if you go alcohol section first, go the booze section.
That'll be a quick trip for me. Right down that aisle. Kate, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Nice to see you. It was really nice to meet you last week. I bet she's going.
Oh,
and Melissa, great to meet you. And maybe we can meet up in person. And you know, if you would be happy to help or for us to refer young people into you, how does it work?
We'll just talk after this, and we'll connect.
Okay.
It'd be great.
Cool.
I'm happy to help. Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah, hang on. Don't hang up. I'll just end the Facebook Live now by thanking everyone at the What's On at Elephant and Castle Facebook page for joining us. Don't forget to join me on Thursday at 11 a.m. and we'll be going through Tough Through Tender and some of the just chats that we're going to have around sports and sports culture. So thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you soon.